Hey everybody, welcome back to part 4, creating scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator using free resources, other than the simulator, of course. Okay, last time well, forget about last time. This time, we are actually going to go into the sim and poke around the editing environment and get you familiar with what that looks like. All right. Now, after Sim Update 7, anytime that you go into the sim, you, you, you get all those notifications, control notifications and stuff like that. Unfortunately, until that bug gets fixed, we need to turn that stuff off. So in the sim, go to Options, go to Assistance, go to Notifications, and turn all these puppies off. And then Apply and Save. And then you can go back to the sim. All right. Now, unfortunately, you have to do that every time that you come into the sim if you have dev mode turned on. Video 1, I talked about how to get into dev mode, so go back and review that. It's always a good idea to do something that you're familiar with for your very first project. So pick your home airport and work on something that you know, okay? And build that model in Blender. We'll get to that in some upcoming videos of working with Blender and getting your custom models out of Blender and into the sim. But I want you to get familiar with the development environment in the flight simulator. So I'm picking an airport that's close to me. You can pick any other airport that you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the world map and I'm going to choose my airport. Mine happens to be 5 Alpha 1. And I'm going to start at a parking space. That way my airplane is cold and dark. I've already changed my weather to clear conditions. It's best to be in clear conditions when you're doing your scenery. You can play with the weather later on to see what your scenery looks like in different weather conditions. But for now, I'm going to keep it clear. And then hit fly. Okay, that brings you into the sim just like you normally would, like if you were going to fly. All right, see these annoying notifications? They'll keep coming up when you're in dev mode. But anyway, we can deal with that later. So you get into the sim just like normal, like you're getting ready to fly. The next step is to actually start the scenery editor or project editor. So come up to Tools. No, let me explain these. So Tools will turn on the project editor and some other things once you're in the editor. But if you want to do statistics and other functions, you use the tool. Camera will turn on the developer camera. Allows you to be outside of your aircraft and move around. I'll show you how to do that. Options, we'll talk about these in other videos coming up. Windows, really in the Windows menu, the most important thing is the console. Okay, that brings up all the error reporting that the simulator has going on. And this is always updating, all right? So every once in a while, you'll have to clear it by hitting the eraser button to clear that console. Because any animations that are built into the sim, different functions of drawing scenery, not scenery that you've created, but default scenery. Sometimes those have errors and they're going to show up in this console window. So every once in a while, you'll want to clear that out so you can only see the stuff that is dealing with your particular editing session. To close that console window, just hit X. Okay, so the console window can be opened by going to Windows, Console, opens up the console window. To close it, it's X. Another way is to hit the tilde key on your keyboard, and the tilde key toggles the console window. Okay, so console window is important, and you'll see where we use that later on. The help, it's where you can download your SDK updates and things like that. So let's go to Tools and turn on the Project Editor. The Project Editor brings up a couple windows that are translucent. When they're translucent, you can click through them. Okay. The left side, the right side is the inspector. We'll talk about that when we get into our scenery. The left side is just a list of things that deal with your project folder package. Okay, you'll see that coming up here as well. So we went to Tools, opened up the Project Editor. Now you want to open up your project. In our case, it's TUT1. So you're going to go to Project, Open Project, and then navigate where you have your project. We have ours in the tutorial folder, and there's TUT1, which is our project. Double click that, opens up that folder, and the first TUT1 XML that you see is what you open. Okay, so click that and hit open, and in this project window now you have the project, it's open, and if you expand that, you see all the assets that you have assigned to that particular project. We have a model lib, and we also have, we also have the material lib. The material lib, since we're not using it right away, will cause a failure. I can guarantee that. But in the next video, I'll show you how to clean that up. I don't want to confuse you guys too much yet. So just understand, since we're not using, we have it defined, but we're not actually using it yet. I don't have any materials assigned to it yet. I have an image in the directory, but we haven't told the sim how to use it. So when I build the project, that means create a package for distribution, build, that it compiles it into its final form. Since I'm not using the material lib, it will fail because I haven't added a material to the library. Does that make sense? I hope it does, but don't worry about it. We'll take care of it later. So when you first create a project, a scenery, you've already created the project with the previous videos. Now we're bringing it into the sim. You're going to select the My Scene BGL, okay, and you're going to load that into the editor. Now, if you notice, when I click each one of these, I get in the inspector window over here, I get some unique information for each type of asset that I'm working with. All right, if you notice, remember when we, like for instance, let's go to the materials, and I look over here in the inspector. Remember in our XML when we changed the name of the material library from materials to TUT1 dash materials? Okay, that shows up here because it's reading that from the XML that we edited earlier. Same with the model lib. Same thing. We renamed the model lib directory to be TUT1 dash model lib. Okay? So the inspector is dependent on which asset group that you select. Now, for building your scenery, you're concentrating on the BGL, the My Scene asset. Okay, so make sure you have the BGL selected and then load that into the editor. This takes you automatically, it should, into the developer camera mode. You're outside of the airplane. If it doesn't take you into the developer camera, just come up to camera and tick the developer camera and you'll have this view that we have right now. Okay? How to navigate. How to navigate with the developer camera is pretty easy. Anytime you make a movement with your mouse, make sure that you have the Alt key, the left Alt key pushed down. Don't just press it, but hold it down and then use the mouse to move around. There's 3 different ways to move around. So hold down the Alt key. If you hold down the Alt key and the right mouse key and then move your mouse, we don't pan, we zoom in and out. Okay? That's Alt plus the right mouse key. The Alt plus the middle mouse key is the pan. Okay, so we can move our mouse and pan left, right, up, forward, backwards. Okay. If you hold down the Alt key and the left mouse button, that will tilt your scene. Okay, so a combination of the 3, you can navigate. All right. So that is navigating with the developer camera. Let me pause and get my breath. Okay, so when you first come into the environment, you may not have the material editor, you may not have the object editor, you may not even have the inspector window, and you probably won't have the scenery editor. You might come up and it looks like this. In order to get those menus back, or get those menus, you're going to come up to Tools. If you want the scenery editor, you just tick that and that scenery editor shows up. If you want the inspector, go to Tools. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong one. Hold on. If you want the inspector, go to the project window, do View, and then the inspector, and the inspector shows up. If you want the material library to show up, or your material editor, Tools, Material Editor, and it shows up. If you want the object editor, which most of you are going to have, you come down here to the scenery editor, View, Objects, and then that objects editor shows up. Okay? Right down here. And each one of these can be moved independently by holding the margin of the window, okay, and then dragging it. Takes a little getting used to, okay? All right, another short break to catch my breath and thought. Now, the scenery editor is a list in this box, is a list of everything that you put in your scene. Easy enough? All right, so project window are the list of assets, and then each asset group has scenery objects or scenery data. All right. Since we're in the Bugle, the BGL file, this is going to be inside this box is going to be the list of all the objects that we put into our scene. The material editor is going to show you all of the materials that are available for you to use for doing ground textures and stuff like that. If you have, let me expand this down a little bit, move this up. All right, anything with Asobo in front of the material is a library that Asobo has created for the default. So if you wanted to do concretes and see what change some of the concrete textures and stuff, you would select that library and the list of all the textures show up on the left. Now, obviously, we're not seeing them, so if you want to see what they are before you use them, click the bitmap preview. Then when you hover over the object, it shows you what it looks like. Okay? And that happens for each library that you select. Okay? Now, remember, when we created our TUT1 project, we created our own material library and called it TUT1-materials. And then we put in an image into that directory, into the textures directory for that material. All right? Since we have that library, that TUT1 over here in the material library shows up. If I click on it, you'll notice that there's nothing in it because we haven't told the simulator that the image that's in that folder is to be associated with that new library. Okay? Since we don't have it in there, when I build the package for this project, I'll get a failure. So let's not panic now, but I'll show you how to fix it in the next video. The next important menu is the Objects menu. All right? The Objects menu is kind of like the material libraries, except this is a list of libraries that have models in them. Buildings and fence and cars and trucks and towers and what have you. Anything that has an Asobo in front of it is given to you by the flight sim people, okay? Anything that's in this library, in any of these libraries, okay, you are free to use in your own scene without asking anybody's permission, all right, if it has an Asobo in front of it. Also with FS base, same thing. That's free stuff, like you can look at an elephant screen and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so anything that's in these libraries that have Asobo down to FS or Microsoft, all right, those are free for you to use. If you have scenery in your community folder, all the objects that make up those scenery files that you've downloaded from flightsim.to or bought on the marketplace or whatever, they will also be available for you to use in your scene. However, it's a good idea to ask the creator if you can use it in your scene. That's just common courtesy, all right? If you're making payware, then you better ask them, or there's some copyright stuff, all right? So that is the object menu. Now, if you go into a library, and let's select this Akron Fulton Airport right here. This is my scenery that I created, so I can use it if I want to. But if I click on that, I see a list of all the objects that I have custom made in my library. If I click on them, I don't see what it looks like. How you see what an object looks like is you come down to the one-click placing and make a check mark there. Then when you click on an object in the library, it actually shows you what it looks like. So that's a good way to toggle through and find the building that you're interested in order to put it into your scene, okay? Now, when I click, it's going to place that building where I click. And if I have one-click placing, every time I click my mouse, it's going to put that object there. So make sure that when you're done looking, you uncheck that. The next thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to start working with the scenery a little bit. So I'm going to use my mouse and I'm going to kind of move my scene in a way that is going to be useful for me. If you use the scroll wheel, it zooms in and out as well. All right, so here's an airport, and these are auto-generated buildings. and they don't look like any of the buildings that are there in real life. All right, I want to put my own model in there. Okay, so we need to tell the sim not to draw these buildings, and that is done by the scenery object over here in the scenery object in the object menu, polygon. So select polygon, and then down here you're going to see the add button. Hit the add button and you'll get this little red crosshair. To start building a polygon, hold down the left control and left mouse button will add a point. Each time you click the left mouse button, it adds a point. So I'm going to click a polygon around here. Then when I get to my last point, I'm just going to hit enter to close that polygon. Okay, everybody got that so far? Now we need to tell the simulator what to do with that polygon. And in this case, we want to tell it, do not draw any buildings, default generated buildings inside that polygon. We need the properties of this polygon. So in any space, right click and check properties. And you get the properties window for this particular polygon. And you can name that polygon. Okay, so over here in our list we have building off polygon, and I'm going to expand buildings and check mark exclude all. That's going to remove drawing any default buildings inside that polygon. If you notice, the buildings have now gone away, other than what's in the actual image, the Bing image itself. Okay, then you can close that. Now we need to save this polygon. And how you save this polygon is you come down here to save scenery, and you're going to get prompted to where to save that polygon file. All right, and the polygon file is going to be saved in the package sources scene folder, and we're going to give it a unique name, but not a name that is exactly like our project. Okay, it's going to be close, but not exactly the same. So I'm going to call this polygon tut1 shape, and I'm going to make it SHP, short for shape. Okay, and that's being saved in package sources scene, and I hit save. Now, when you add more polygons to your scene for different for other characteristics, you won't have to save that shape again, because it will write every polygon that you make from now on into that shape file. Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to pause, catch my breath. All right, I'm doing this live, so that's why we got some pauses here and there. So thanks for sticking with me. All right, next we're going to add an object, a pre-existing object in one of the libraries. Okay, we're going to add a building. All right, there's a hangar that sits right here. Now, if I was really doing this airport, I would make my own model that looks like the hangar that actually is there. But this is just an introductory to the environment. So I'm going to use a pre-existing model in this spot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use my mouse, and I am going to come over here, and I'm going to go into the objects menu, and I'm going to change this back up to scenery, and I'll explain all the other object types later on in other videos. So I have my list of object libraries, and I'm going to come down to one of mine, and here's my Akron Fulton building library. Click on that, and I'm going to select the AKR FBO, the FBO for that particular airport. And I'm going to turn on one click so we can see what it looks like. So there's the FBO. It's just a hangar with an office space. And I'm going to click my mouse right here. Boom. It's in the scene. Now, since I have one click placing, notice that everywhere I click my mouse, I'll have that FBO. So make sure before you start editing the one that you just placed, you uncheck one-click placing. Okay? With me? All right. There are different properties that you can change to the object that you add. Okay, so let's click the building. Notice we have the handle. Okay, and if I move the handle using the green box, I can move it freely anywhere. If I grab it by one of these axis poles, it will move it in that axis. Now notice when I do the one that's pointed up, it doesn't move. Okay, it's not moving. That's because by default, any object that you add to the sim is snapped to the ground, so you can't change its elevation. So we want to get to the properties of this particular object. So right click with it selected, right click and check mark properties. You got the name of the object. Notice that it says snap to ground. I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm going to come back to the handle, and now I can move it up and down. See how that works? Now if I check snap to ground, it will does exactly what it says it's going to do, snap it to the ground. All right? So I'm done with this property window for this particular object. Now, there's another way to get to how to move and rotate this object, and that's with the gizmo toolbox. So come over to the scenery editor, go to view, and check gizmo. You'll get this box that allows you to translate, which translate means move left, right, backwards, forwards, okay? You can rotate it on any of the three axes, horizontal, vertical, all right? So we can turn the object any way you want. So I'm going to rotate this on the horizontal axis. I think my hangar doors are on, yeah, my hangar doors are on this side. Okay, so I rotated it. I'm going to hit the translate, and I'm going to move it over this way a little bit. Okay? And then scale, if I hit scale, I can change the size of the building. I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, all right, by using handles, all right? Or you can actually type in a scale factor, all right? You can also enter in actual coordinates to place your object exactly in the real world that it is. But most of us use the aerial photo as a reference and do it visually. Okay? You with me so far? All right, we're almost at the next step. This next step we talked about in the last video. In the last video, I had you delete something called the objects XML because we were using a sample project to make our new project, right? And that objects XML had the objects of the sample in that file. So I said delete it because we're not going to have those objects in our scene. We're going to create a brand new objects XML. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be named objects XML, okay? So when you create a scene and you add an object for the very first time, and you go down here to save scenery, can you guys see that, or am I in the way? I think I'm in the way. Okay, down here, you have save scenery right down here. Sorry, I was in the way. If you hit save scenery, you're going to get prompted to save an XML, okay? When you first put an object in and save, you're going to need to have an objects XML, but you can call it anything that you want as long as it's not exactly the same name as your project. So we're going to call this one TUT1, and we'll call this SCN, short for scene, and save. So now we have the new objects XML, except we named it TUT1 SCN. So it's TUT1 SCN.xml, and you'll see that here in a second. So the next step, after you're done, let's pretend that we're done for the day adding objects to our scene. We have our bounding polygon that eliminates auto-gen buildings, and we've added our first object to our scene, and we save that to the XML. Now it's time to build the package. And what I mean by build the package is we're making the simulator, we're telling the simulator to compile our scene into a BGL format for Flight Simulator to use. When you build a package is the final scene, and the package is what you copy into your community folder or put up on a site for distribution, for download. Okay? So building creates all the dependencies for the package. Are you with me? Okay. So to build a package, after you're done doing all your edits, come up to the name of the package, which is right up here, the TUT1. Come over to the inspector, because the inspector is correlated to each one of these assets or the entire project in itself. And you're going to come up here. I'm going to move this screen down a little bit, move this objects window down a little bit. Come on. There we go. Let's move these down. So you have all these fill in the blanks. You can give it a company name, like MPW for My Physical World. Hit enter. If you don't hit enter, it won't save what you've entered in that spot. The package name, I already given it a package name, TUT1. Manufacturer, that's usually just for aircraft, Airbus, Boeing, Cessna, blah, blah, blah. A title, I'll just call this Huron for now. And then creator's name could be yours or whatever you call yourself. And we are building a scenery package. Okay. Placeholder, this is the image, the splash screen for your particular scene. So I could have a picture of a hangar sitting in there or something like that. But I'm just using the placeholder for this video. The next step is to build your package. So what I want you to do is go to Window, open up the console, and you're going to see that there's 3 errors. We haven't built yet. These 3 errors, something in the simulator is causing an error, but nothing for you to be concerned about, okay? It always has errors in one way or the other. So just go to the Clear All button and clear your console, close your console out. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the gizmo window as well. Then when you build, click the build, and you'll get a fresh tag of everything that deals with your build itself. Notice I have 2 errors, and they both deal with the material, that material library. Since I have a material library defined, I haven't told Microsoft Flight Simulator how to use it. So that's why I got that error and why my build failed with 1 failure. If I come up here, notice I have, you're looking for this line, build package builder finished. It skipped 4, did 2, my polygon and my building, and 1 failed. This particular failure has to deal with me not defining my material library. We will take care of that in the next video, okay? But your goal is to have 0 errors when you build a package. Everybody with me? All right. So let's go ahead and close the console, and let's say we're done for the day. You're going to come up to Project, and you're going to close your project. Then you're going to go to Tool, close your project editor. Now you're back in the sim like you're a pilot. Hit your escape and get out of the sim like you normally would. Okay? And when that's done, I'll be right back. Okay, so we're out of the simulator and I am in Windows Explorer and I'm in my TUT1 project, package folders, scene directory. Remember, the scene directory is where we deleted the objects XML last video. But you notice now we have two new XMLs in that folder. We have the scenery XML and we have the shape XML. If I right click the shape XML and open that up in Note++, it's all the information that defines that original polygon that we put in there, okay? And what each property of that polygon. So it has the texture name, airport bounds, version, and then it has all these exclusions so it doesn't draw any buildings in there. Okay, so that is the shape XML. And you hardly ever mess with the shape XML. There's no use. Okay? But if we close this out and we look at the tut1 scn.xml, this used to be the objects XML, but we gave it a unique name. So let's right click that, open that up in Notepad++, and you'll notice that we have one scenery object with these coordinates, okay, and the GUI ID, okay, which is a unique number, and we'll talk more about the GUID number later on, all right? But this right here, this line in our file, and it actually goes out this way, this is that FBO hanger that we added to our scene. So anytime that we add anything to our scene, it gets written to this tut1 scn.xml. All right. So any object that you add gets added. So this list is going to get longer and longer every time that we add something to our scenery file. All right. I will talk more about this XML later on because this is a powerful file that you have here, and so much cool stuff can be done with this. All right, especially when things don't go right, you can rebuild a project just using this one file. Okay, so that was the quick introduction to the scenery editor. We'll explore more in upcoming videos. I know it might have been dry, but we're getting into the meats and potatoes of the scenery. Now next time we'll get into Blender, we'll create our own custom building, and I'll show you how to get that into the simulator. Plus we're going to fix that material library failure that we had, which is kind of a normal thing to do. All right. Hey, I appreciate you all for watching this video, for subscribing to the channel and all that kind of stuff. You guys are great, and I can't wait to get more of you guys involved in the scenery creation process. So tell your friends. If you're inclined, please support me and buy me a coffee or something like that. But anyway, I do this for free. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you guys on the next video. See ya.